what do you see in 23? I suspect this crash is going to be different than 2008, because after the subprime market crash again in 2008, the Fed dropped interest rates like this, our debt went like this, and now in 2023, we're screwed. So the whole ecosystem has changed. And so this economy is very, very different. So I have a question in that saying it's different this time. Do you concur or not concur that this crash is going to be different than 2008 for real estate specifically?
Well, there's a couple things. One, the sentiment, the people out there believe, so that's the same. So in other words, everybody just got through this 10-year run. They believe next year is going to be better. So just like in 08, when you were talking about earlier, so that's the same. People, when guys like you and I come out and say, this is going to be a rough patch, could be even worse, everybody's saying that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. So it's kind of the same, that's the same. But I agree with you, there's a lot of things that are very different this time around. People are in a lot worse situation, I believe. I just did a video this week on YouTube. There's over 300,000 people already underwater on their mortgages that bought in 2022 already.
Key to real estate is jobs. And this time, not only interest rates came down after 2008, interest rates are going up this time in 2023. And we're going to have massive unemployment. You look at, I forget, Meta or Facebook, one of those, they're laying off thousands and thousands and thousands of workers. So it's not only interest rates going this way, it's unemployment going this way too. And would you agree with that, Kenny? If you don't have jobs, that crushes real estate.
Yeah, I always tell people, real estate exists for people, period. You have to have people for it to work. It doesn't really matter what it is, an office building, retail, shopping center, apartments, houses. If there's no people and they can't afford it, then, real estate's going to suffer. And that's where we're heading next.
Right. So when they dropped interest rates after 2008, people were flush with cash because they could afford to flip and do all those goofy things. Then they could afford to go shopping. So you mentioned one of my favorite subjects is shopping centers. I think they're going to be turned into apartment houses eventually, because if he keeps crushing retail plus restaurants plus his commercial.
I'm actually literally looking at a shopping center right now that's lost the anchor. Some of the tenants that are in there are, struggling, obviously, because you need an anchor in order to draw people to those. And so Ross and I are looking at one right now that we would basically demolish and then put multifamily on.
You'll put apartment houses on it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So same thing, what happens in these cycles, different kinds of real estate gets repurposed, as you know. So, and we're looking at several corners around Phoenix and Tucson right now where, that's already happening. The online retailer, I don't know about you, but there's been 50 Amazon packages to my house in the last 2-3 days, right? Because obviously it's Christmas time around that time. But the point is, people aren't doing the bricks and mortar anymore, and it's really starting to show up. And so when those stores start to close, then, the other little guys that are in those centers start to close. And then, and that's when you start to repurpose those corners.
So I want to explain to everybody one of the reasons Kenny is so successful. He's a professional in the business, but he started in property management. And property management is where the money is made or lost, right in there. Plus his partner comes from the finance side, the savings and loan, which are all gone today. And that's a secret to his success. And again, I just want to reiterate this. In 2008, when everybody was out there buying houses they couldn't afford, they had ninja loans, no income, no job, Kenny was doing this. He says, the idiots are in the market and they're going to lose their houses soon. It was going to bring the whole market down in 2008. And when it came down, Bernanke got a Nobel Prize. Can you imagine that? One of the biggest criminal Fed chairman gets a Nobel Prize for that. So now the whole economy is in this massive, massive bubble. And the new Fed chairman, Powell, is raising interest rates. So this is not 2008, this is 2023.
Well, we've already seen, significant drops in residential, commercial, already in the last 6 months. So, we own 10,000 units. So, we have a very active pipeline with acquisition people and analysts. And so every single week, I'm looking at, 4 to 8 deals every week, all over Texas, Arizona. So I am in touch with the markets. I know what brokers are doing. I know what sellers are doing. We know what the capital markets are doing. And, and then we also have 68 million in renovations going on in our 10,000 apartments. So I understand the supply issues and the labor issues and all that kind of stuff. So we already are seeing, well, I did a video called Pencils Down. I said, hey, time to put your pencils down and just let the Fed do their thing. And because what I'm trying to do, Robert, is I'm trying to get the sellers to adjust their expectations. There's a big difference between the bid and the ask right now, between what I'm willing to pay and what the seller is willing to do. But I have all the leverage. I hold all the cards.
Let's say I'm mom and pop. So let's say they bought a property in 2020. This is 2022 right now. And they're upside down. The house, so let's say they bought it at 100,000, it's now 200,000 and coming down. They still have a job, which is key to the whole thing. So let's have a property I paid 200,000 for, is now on its way past 100. What would you say to that person?
Well, the main thing is the cash flow. And by the way, I bought real estate in 2005 and the value went down. But what saved me was the cash flow during those rough years. So if they can figure out a way to cover their expenses and their mortgage payment, hold on, because obviously you have to write a check to get out of something like that. So, that's the number one thing. And I think what people don't realize is that at the end of the day, the tenants, they pay your house off. So they're gold. And so you have to treat them well. You have to take care of them and then just ride it out. Because I've been through this and what saved my butt was my tenants and managing the property well and keeping the occupancies high.
What do you say to people like that? I mean, let's say they're upside down. Let's say they pay 200 and it's 100 and they're losing money. They can't get enough tenants. How does a person get out of that?
There's only one way. I mean, you got to pay somehow, some way. And so you have to be scrappy and figure out how to cover your expenses. And if you can't, then you're going to lose the property and you're going to lose your equity. And so that's what I see next is a lot of, Airbnbs, I don't know if is really down. So, so those people that, their expenses were $7-8 grand a month, let's say, basically the same thing you do when you're in a seat on a plane that's crashing. There's not a lot you can do unless you're cash flowing. I mean, that's it.
What would you recommend to mom and pop? Again, the house they paid 200 for it in 2020, it's now 100. You can't find tenants because when the people lose their jobs, they stop renting too. Well, you have to evict them some of the times. It's a whole different market is what we're saying here. What does that person do?
There's not a lot of choices, honestly, Robert. I mean, the bank's going to want their mortgage, just like if you stop paying your car loan, they're going to come foreclose it. That's just the bottom line. So you have to figure out a way to side hustle or whatever, because, not only would you have to pay that back. So let's say it is a 200 to 100, which is, that's the extreme. Right now, it's at least 20% off, let's say. But regardless, if the bank takes that back, you actually get a tax bill. If they have a write down, you actually get a tax bill for that too. So it's not as simple as just walking away. And you got to fight like heck to figure out how to cover that, how to get that thing and ride it through. And this happened to me in 2005, 2006, and 2007. Ross and I scrambled and we just tried to figure out, how do we just cover our expenses and our debt? And there wasn't a tremendous amount of cash flow, but we were just super concerned about, keeping the properties that we have. And this is the entire point of, reserves and cash being, you got to have reserves and you got to have cash. I know a lot of investors distribute all their money and go buy crap, and they don't have any kind of reserves. And so they don't, any kind of an uptick like interest rates, can wipe out some of their cash flow very quickly, which is exactly what's happening. This debt is killing a lot of people. Anybody who had bridge loans, variables, adjustable rates, all that stuff, their mortgage payments are killing their